I'm Hazel. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Logitech G13 and Razer Orbweaver Gameboards and comparing them from the perspective of an MMO gamer. If you're considering purchasing a Gameboard or upgrading your existing one, hopefully this video helps inform your decision. I'm personally a pretty heavy World of Warcraft player, as you can probably tell, and I have a long history with both of these devices. I used the G13 from 2010 all the way up until 2015, at which point I got myself a Razer Orbweaver, and I've been using that until present day, which is like mid-2017-ish. These are both gamepad input devices ideal for MMO games, and they are both compatible with both Windows and macOS. Basically, the gist of it is that you have a grid keypad here, and then you customize those keybinds to correspond to your abilities within the MMO. This gives you the freedom to keybind lots of abilities to this compact and easy to access area, so that your next move is never too far away from your finger. Using a device like this has personally helped me ease a lot of tension in my wrist to help avoid aggravating my repetitive stress disorder more than playing WoW already does. So let's start by talking about the Logitech G13. I no longer have my G13 game board here with me because it's been a couple years since I wore the thing out, so I'm going to use some images to help me out while I go over the different parts of the game board. First, let's talk about the price. The MSRP price, so the recommended retailer price of the Logitech G13 is $79.99 US, although typically on Amazon and other retailers such as Best Buy, you can often find it for closer to $60. The best way to check the most up-to-date price is to take a look at the Amazon link that I put in the description of this video. For keys, the Logitech G13 features 25 programmable keys, 22 of which are actual keys on the game board. There are two more bigger mouse-style buttons down on the side near the joystick, and you can also click the joystick to activate another button. The keys on this device are membrane keys. They are not mechanical keys. They are decent quality, but they are membrane nonetheless, and what that means is that they are eventually going to wear out with use. It took me about 3 years for them to start losing responsiveness and about 5 years to become just unplayable, and that was with fairly heavy WoW use pretty much every day, but eventually it is going to wear out because like a membrane keyboard, it's just not going to last forever. There's a limited amount of key presses before the thing just decides it doesn't like you anymore. Having said that, in my opinion, 3 to 5 years is a fairly acceptable lifespan for a $60-ish product that you're going to use every day, so take that as you will. The G13 has a customizable LCD game screen. You can set this up to show you all sorts of different information such as your latest whisper, the game you're playing, the current song that you've got going on, and it's kind of neat, but the downside is that if you are looking down at your gamepad and not at your monitor where your game is, you're probably doing it wrong. As far as the cable and backlighting, the G13 uses a plastic cable, so not a braided cable. However, I never had any issues with it in the 5 years I was using it. And then the backlighting is fully customizable. You can change the backlighting of the G13 on a huge color spectrum, so you can match your PC lighting, you can match your mood, you can match your room decor, or you can match your nails. The wrist rest of the G13 is a fixed wrist rest, so it's not in any way adjustable, but it's fairly ergonomic for most people, and I found it much more comfortable than using a regular keyboard. It's got a little bit of rubber on the top of it to make it a little bit grippy so that your hand's not sliding all over the thing. The software is where this product really starts to get a little bit sketchy. The Logitech G13 uses the Logitech Gaming Software, which they also use for things like their G600 mouse. The gaming software has gotten a lot better in recent years, but it is still notoriously unreliable. During the 5 years that I was using my G13, it would frequently lose track of what profile I was supposed to be using. I would have to tab out of my game and restart the software in order for it to remember what my buttons were, and this would happen mid-raid, mid-arena match. It didn't really matter when. Several times a week, it would just decide it didn't want to do what it was doing anymore, and I needed to restart the software. I sincerely hope that they have fixed it so that no longer happens, but I still wouldn't trust the G13 software farther than I can throw it, especially if you're going to try to use the profiles. The software does allow you to set up different profiles for different games, then auto-activate them based on the EXE, but I wouldn't. Every time I tried to do that, it would get very confused about what profile it was supposed to be using, and it just wasn't a very good experience. So I would give the Logitech Gaming Software probably a 3 out of 10. It was functional, and I did manage to use it and get by for, 5 years, but it was not pretty. The gamepad itself has onboard memory to store profiles, so you should be able to take the gamepad around to different computers and have it maintain its keybind. But like I said, I never really had much luck with profile switching to begin with. I've continued using the Logitech Gaming Software in the last 5 years to manage my G600 mouse, and I found it has gotten a lot better. But if you do decide to go the route of a G16, I would caution you that you may have some issues with the software because it has historically been really unreliable. The durability of the G13 was generally very good. As I mentioned, it is membrane key, so it is going to wear out over time. That'll happen to pretty much anything that you slam into a desk for hours a day every single day for 5 years. They will eventually wear it and become unresponsive, but I feel like they had a very good run up until that point. I had a similar issue in the joystick after a couple of years of use. I noticed that because I was using the W, the forward motion, a lot, eventually it stopped to work consistently, and no matter how much I cleaned it, it would just stutter step me forward and make me kind of look like a robot. So if you use it consistently, it will eventually, over the course of 3 to 5 years, wear out, depending on how much you use it. There's probably a lot of people in the world that don't play as much WoW as me, and that's probably good. I used it a lot, and I do think it lasted a very long time for the $60, $65 that I paid for it, but keep in mind that it is going to wear out. Next, let's talk about the Razer Orbweaver. So, starting with the price, the Orbweaver goes for $129.99 US. That is more than double the price of the G13, so off the bat, you're spending more than twice as much. Depending on how regularly and how much time you spend playing MMOs, and how much disposable income you have to dedicate towards your hobby, this may or may not be worth it for you. For the keys, the Orbweaver uses fully mechanical keys. So these are the same keys that you would find on like a Razer Black Widow mechanical keyboard. Me personally, I opted to get the Orbweaver Stealth version, which was available for, I think, an extra $20. That has keys that have a little bit less actuation, but they're much quieter, which is very important for me as somebody that records. If you prefer the clickier keys and you want a more tactile feel under your fingers, definitely go for the regular version. The Orbweaver advertises 30 buttons over the Logitech 23, but the Orbweaver is being sneaky about it. You actually only have 20 keys in the main pad as opposed to the 22 that I believe we saw with the G13. And then, of course, we have 2 larger buttons around the joystick, but they're actually counting all 8 directions on the joystick as separate buttons, which I guess is true. You can keybind whatever you want to them, but you're probably not going to be precise enough to actively keybind different abilities, basically, to those different directions. I, again, just use the joystick for movement. However, I did find having an 8-direction joystick rather than a 4-direction joystick means that you don't have to crank your thumb as far to move, and that the movement is a lot more smooth. The way I like to do it is, instead of going like AWD, I like going QWE, so that I'm moving forward and strafing, and then I use my mouse to turn. You could, of course, bind S to the pulling back on it so you could backpedal like that, but don't do that because nobody likes a backpedaler. As far as an LCD game screen, you can quite clearly see that the Orbweaver does not have one, and I cannot say that I miss it. Next, the cable and backlighting. So the Orbweaver uses a braided cable rather than the plastic one that we found in the G13. That means it's a little bit more durable, a little bit more kink resistant. However, I never really had issues with the G13 one. I would say that if you travel a lot with your gaming gear, bringing it to LAN parties and such, you're going to get more value out of the braided cable, which is going to last longer when you're moving it around a bunch. If you pretty much just park your stuff on the desk and stay put, it's not going to make that big of a difference, but it's still nice to have. As far as the backlighting, lately Razer has been selling the Chroma version of the Orbweaver as the default Orbweaver. You can't, I don't think, get the regular ones anymore. If you're getting an Orbweaver, you're getting a Chroma Orbweaver or a Chroma Stealth. And the Chroma Orbweaver is fully customizable backlighting, just like the Razer G13 is. So again, you can change the color to match whatever you like. The wrist rest on the Orbweaver is adjustable. So whereas the Logitech one was fixed in place, the Razer Orbweaver, you can use this little pin on the side here to adjust and slide out these different parts of the wrist rest to accommodate more hand sizes and posture types. So that's a big plus in the wrist rest. However, the wrist rest also has a big negative, and this has been a very consistent problem with the Orbweavers. It's been reported all over the place online for years, and as far as I know, it's still an issue. And what that issue is, so you see here on the wrist rest, there is a very thin rubber pad that is glued there. That is for traction. And as far as that goes, it works very well. It's not too slippery, it's not too grippy, it feels really good. However, within the first 6 months to a year of using the Razer Orbweaver, that thin layer of rubber is going to start to peel off. Whatever glue that they use to attach it apparently just melts over time with the friction and the warmth from a human hand playing video games, and this will inevitably start to peel off. This happened like clockwork on this Orbweaver that I have, and from what I've read online, it is a very consistent flaw with them. It's almost certainly going to happen if you're playing with this thing every day. Thankfully enough, this is actually a really easy fix. As soon as that started to happen, and I was ready because I'd already read about it online, I took a very thin layer of epoxy, but you could just use super glue. Please do not use regular glue, that's a bad idea. And basically peel the thing all the way back, apply a very thin layer, very carefully lay it back in place, and then press it down and let it set. And it's pretty much good as new. You would never know that it's been re-glued, and it has not moved since. So really annoying that you have to do that, but it's very easy to work around, and that is the only really significant build issue that I have found with the Orbweaver. For software, the Orbweaver uses Razer Synapse as opposed to the Logitech Gaming Software. Synapse is definitely not perfect, but I have found it vastly preferable, whereas the Logitech one required me to restart it multiple times a week in order for it to remember what it was supposed to be doing. Synapse does that to me maybe once a year. For the most part, it works perfectly fine, stays out of my way, I keep it in the system tray, and everything's fine. Just like the Logitech version, you can use it to set up multiple profiles for different games and then have those automatically switch depending on which EXE you're running. And it's also fairly easy to go in and set up your key bindings for the first time. I would say that the Synapse is a better experience than the Logitech Gaming Software. They're both not great, but we gotta use what we gotta use. As far as durability, the Orbweaver has had much better key durability. Of course, I haven't had it as long. I've been using this for about 3 years as opposed to the 5 that I had the G13. But in those 3 years, the keys are just as responsive as they were the day that they were new. And because they're fully mechanical keys, I would expect that to continue to be true for at least several more years. The larger buttons and then the movement stick are not mechanical, so those are going to be more prone to wearing out, but I haven't had any issues with them. You'll notice I've worn the matte coating on top of the keys out in a couple of spots, particularly my modifiers, but that doesn't affect the usability of the keys, and otherwise it's worked very well. So my conclusion here is that if you have the extra money and you spend a lot of time regularly playing MMOs such as World of Warcraft, I would absolutely go for the upgrade of the Orbweaver. It doesn't have the frustrating software issues of the G13, the keys are more responsive, the keys last longer, you're going to have reduced input lag with the mechanical keys for things like raiding and PvP, and overall it's just a higher quality, better functioning, and more durable piece of kit, with the exception of the terribly glued on wrist pad, which is fairly easily remedied. I will add the addendum that please, when you purchase it, just have like a little tiny thing of super glue or epoxy out of reach of children, of course, but just around so that when it inevitably starts to peel off, you can just fix it right away and not have to stress out about the fact that your $130 gamepad looks like it's falling apart. That really sucks, and I really wish they would just find a different glue that does not melt, but we can't have everything in life. So before I go, I want to take a quick minute to go over a couple of tips I have for somebody if they are potentially thinking of upgrading from a keyboard to a gamepad for the first time. To quickly summarize the benefits of using the gamepad, 1, the joystick, like I mentioned, can be used for movement, which frees up your more valuable fingers for actual keybinds. Secondly, it's a great peripheral for gaming on a laptop. So if you are, for whatever reason in your life, stuck gaming on a laptop, instead of percussively pounding on your keyboard while you play a game for hours every day and basically hitting your computer repeatedly for years, you can do that to a peripheral that is designed to withstand that abuse. So you're going to extend the life of your laptop. You're not going to have to deal with a hot laptop keyboard. You're going to have a better key experience, and just generally kind of improves the experience of playing WoW on a laptop, should that be your life. Finally, I have found it to be very helpful in reducing the amount of repetitive stress that I have on my wrists. Of course, if you are having regular pain in your wrist from playing games, consult your doctor. Stretch regularly, and then the other thing that you should ask your doctor about that I found has very, very much helped me is adopting a regular weightlifting regimen for the arms and wrists to help sort of strengthen the framework on which those button mashing muscles lie. So my first major tip for somebody switching to a gamepad from a keyboard is to allow yourself some time. You are not going to like it at first. You are going to plug it in, get it set up, try and play the game, and go, oh gosh, everything's different, I hate it. That is completely normal. It's going to happen to everybody, and nobody likes change. It's going to take you some time to get used to it. My best tip for quickly adjusting to using the gamepad and using these different keys that are going to feel very different from a keyboard, what I did was actually in WoW, I created a new character, and I leveled that up while I was learning my keybinds. So the benefit there was, instead of looking at a button that I normally know how to press and having to fight my muscle memory, I was learning new buttons and then associating them with the keys as I went along. That made it a lot easier for me to adjust, and then by the time I had made some progress in that character, it was easier for me to go over to my other characters, remap my abilities, and continue on with my life. So definitely don't give up on it in the first couple of days. Give yourself at least a couple of weeks with it before you really make a decision. And then, of course, if you still hate it, you can return it. But I found that once you get used to it, it's a lot more effective than a regular keyboard, or at least for me. My second piece of advice is to make sure that you set up some modifiers. So over here, I have a Shift and an Alt modifier. And I would recommend putting those kind of where your pinky normally sits on the gamepad so that it's similar to what you would experience in a keyboard. Using Shift and Alt modifiers means you have effectively triple the amount of keys available to you. Really great for targeting macros, for PvP, and then also just if you're playing a class that still somehow, after ability pruning, has way too many buttons, you have a button for everything. So I definitely recommend setting 2 of those 20 keys to Shift and Alt so that you have the same options you would have in a regular keyboard. My next piece of advice is to make sure that you are smart when you are figuring out where to put the buttons, specifically your rotational spammy abilities, which, for example, for me as a Legion Shadow Priest, things like Void Bolt, things like Mind Flay, things that I'm pressing all the time, put them on your home row keys. To me, those are the 6 right here in the middle. Those are very easy to hit with fingers that are good at hitting keys, so make sure that you put your more frequently used keys sort of under your index finger in a place where it doesn't have to move so far, so you're not hand cramping. And then things that you use less often but still regularly, put on keys that are a little bit farther away. So for example, I keep my auto run over here on the top right hand corner, because I'm not really hitting that during combat, but I still want that in an easy to find place so that I can spack it without having to look around for my auto run too much. And then my final piece of advice to you is take a screenshot of your keybinding profile, whether you end up using the G13 or the Orbweaver. Once you have your keybinds set up in either Logitech Gaming Software or Synapse, take a screenshot of your keybinds that shows what they all are on the gamepad, and then save that to the cloud, save it to a USB flash drive, carve it into a tablet, and then stick it in your closet. You just want to have that in a couple different places, just in case like the universe decides it hates you and you somehow lose all of your profiles. There's all sorts of different reasons why you could lose everything, and it really sucks to rebuild that profile from memory. So just take a screenshot, save it somewhere safe, and then if something ever does happen and you lose all your keybinds, you can rebuild that profile very quickly and get back on your feet. So that is the review of the two gamepads that I have the most experience with. I'm going to put Amazon links in the description below this video for both of these products, so you can take a look and find out more info, read more reviews, or purchase one if you decide you want to order one. Thank you so much for watching. If you personally have experience with one of these products, please consider leaving that as a comment so that people can sort of read through the comments of this video and get some more perspectives other than just mine. Also consider leaving a like if you like this video, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.